Welcome to the Simplifier podcast, where we turn complexity into clarity. I'm your host, Daniel. This episode is brought to you in partnership with TechPon. My guest for today is Angeley Mullins. She's a seasoned marketing, commercial, and operations executive. She has an impressive background, including roles at Amazon and GoDaddy. Also, Crunchbase recognized her as one of the 2023's most influential women in sales. Angeley also advocates for women in leadership and diversity, holding advisory and membership roles across the tech industry. And her most recent role is Chief Commercial Officer at Resourcify, a digital platform that helps companies reduce waste, increase recycling, and promote a circular economy. Welcome, Angeley, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, nice, Daniel. It's nice to be here.
Great. Today, I would love to learn more about the strategies behind positioning, messaging, and go-to-market that you have executed for Amazon, GoDaddy, and now Resourcify. But before we start, I have a question. How would you describe yourself behind the titles, the roles? Who is Angeley at her core?
What a great question. So for all the listeners, you can hear from my accent. I currently live in Berlin, but I'm not from Germany. I'm from sunny San Diego, California. So for all you out there that love the sun, I'm a person who's really loves their craft, loves what they do. I love building things and scaling things. I love go-to-market. I love everything that is marketing, digital sales, etc. And I've done it across many different markets. So from the US and Spain and Australia and the UK and Europe and a little bit in China, a little bit in Israel. So I'm a person who loves what they do and loves to do it over and over again. So one of those executive leaders that likes to scale. And like you said, also, I really believe in the power of mentorship as well, bringing up the next round of leaders. So I focus on female leadership, but also I do have quite a few men that ask me for mentorship. So also a person that likes to give back.
Wow. So you really love your craft. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Can you please tell me, in your experience in companies like Amazon or GoDaddy, how did you initially approach defining market positioning, especially for products with a wide range of customers across different industries and with multiple use cases?
It's quite interesting. So my first role in tech was at Amazon. I led the marketing and go-to-market for a group called Amazon Global. It's their international cross-border trade group. So the use case, if you want to paint the picture, is let's say you live in South Africa or Vietnam, or a country that doesn't have an Amazon marketplace. So it doesn't have a formal Amazon website, but you want to shop on Amazon. What do? And so you're usually trying to find, the marketplace that's closest to you. So it could be UK, US, Germany, Japan, and then you're trying to figure out what actual products can ship to your country and what are those taxes and imports like. So for all of the listeners, anyone that's ever received something from across borders and you get that ridiculous customs fee at the end and things aren't done properly, it can be quite frustrating. So how do you position something like that? And how do you do a go-to-market and positioning? So the way that we did it, and this is going back some years ago, is we went with the tagline, international shipping made easy. We really talked about combining customs duties, taxes, fees together. And you knew that if you went with this Amazon global service, that everything would be taken care of. So it's basically your white glove service for anything that was cross-border, international. And that positioning worked quite well. And it worked so well that they ended up putting the Amazon global filter, which any of you that are ex-Amazon know how difficult it is to get that filter on that website. So you could actually then just filter out the category and do everything. So the positioning worked, I would say, exceedingly well in this case.
But did you get it from the first time, or did you have I don't know multiple iterations until you find that thing that worked?
multiple iterations. And Amazon, they are the king of data analysis. I would almost say to the point of data paralysis, where they are definitely all about your analysis, and you're doing your A/B testing and your MBT testing, and you're doing all kinds of user research panels to figure out. And it's very different. We dealt with up to 68 different markets at the time.
68, 68,
68,
68. Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of different markets, and you're trying to figure out what's the positioning that can cover the majority of markets. In this case, you're not going to please everybody. But for those people listening, take out your mobile device, go onto the Amazon app, click change country, and then see what your experience is like. And so how do you make that experience similar and also applicable to such a wide audience? And so I think that was really, the goal for us. And I think that we did absolutely the best we could. And it's turned out to be quite a good business for Amazon.
Wow. How long it took you until you find that something, that positioning that generated results, something that worked and clicked with the audience? How long was the process?
I would say, and this is a little different because Amazon's very well known for going at warp speed. So their timelines, I would say, are not the same as other companies' timelines, but literally for us, a month tops, a matter of weeks, because if you have such an e-commerce behemoth, you're talking about, in this case, in the US and US dollars, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars of lost opportunity if you don't get it right, if you don't do it fast. In other companies and in other use cases, it can take you months, up to 6 months. You can test different go-to-market, strategies and propositions. You're running all kinds of tests with, product offerings. You're putting product marketing in there. But just because we're talking about Amazon, it's a very unique use case.
Yeah, they have all the money in the world. So basically they have all the resources in the world and access to data, which is very important because when you're an early stage company, you don't have access to those data. You don't know too many things about your customers. And I want to ask you, of course, Amazon is Amazon, but how can a founder, an early stage tech founder, can approach this positioning issue when they serve multiple industries, they serve multiple personas, they have their technology has multiple use cases, and of course the budget is limited. What are their options? You already said it might take up to 6 months, but what can you do? Let's say you have this great technology, this great product. It's great because people love it, but you still don't know which is your best industry, which is your best fit client, which is the best persona. How can you find that positioning that clicks when you have all these issues and limited resources? What would you say?
It's one of the number one questions, not only that I get asked, but that's out there in the community. For any early stage founders listening to this, I would say that there's a very big difference between your founder-led sales motion and the positioning there and how you're acquiring clients, and then what I call building the black box, which is the scalable model. And this is where this transition, usually you see speed bumps or hiccups or a very big difference in your positioning. So let me give you an example. So if you are an early stage founder and you're trying to get your first 10 to 20 clients, usually what happens is they will sell to anyone and anything with any type of personalization, just anything possible to get in their clients. But then they tend to think, okay, I have my first 10 to 20 clients. So I think maybe we're really indexing on this vertical, or maybe the positioning should be that. But what happens is that is not the same as your scalable model, meaning what you can sell and position over and over and over again. And this is where that jump in this road usually falls apart. So what can you do? You start to look at cohorts. So let's say you're doing great in the fintech vertical, or you're doing great in FMCG, for example. Can you figure out a scalable motion from a positioning perspective that will win over that ICP and that persona every single time? If you have to put together positioning and then you're constantly adding personalization and add-ons just to get a deal or just to get your client interested, then you know that you do not yet have this scalable model and the positioning needs to be altered. It's a really, really important point, because if you are pre-seed, seed, Series A, this is usually where companies come into issues. Your first-time clients are not going to be the same as your 50th client or your 100th client. So another example would be a lot of early-stage founders do a go-to-market positioning. Save 20, 30% in costs. Or our feature, which is so typical in SaaS, and Daniel, I'm sure you've seen it, the websites with, here's our product and our product marketing, here's all the features, I call it the chart of death, and here's your competitors, and our features are better than their features. It's absolutely what you should not be doing. You need to be selling them value.
You said you need to test positioning with that specific type of personas, with that specific type of companies. This will take you time. Is there any framework that you're using? Is there any tool, any methodology that will allow you to test and validate your assumptions faster than just going and knocking on 100 doors? I don't know, I'm just taking a random number, until you find the people that are willing to buy your product, your technology, and test and validate with them the technology and also the positioning, and finalizing this process. Well, is there any framework that can help you do this faster, or is you just need to be consistent, go in the market, talk to people, and this is how you find your product market fit in the end, and you can clearly define the positioning?
So there's frameworks and there's tools. So a framework would be cohort modeling. So you take your different cohorts. So if your ICP is, let's make something up, you're selling into FMCG, and you want these big enterprise players, or even if you're selling into SMB mid-market and you want, only consumer goods, etc. Okay, you have your TAM. Then you start to drill that down to who are your key personas. Let's say you're selling to procurement people, or you're selling to buyer purchasers, etc. You've got that down. Then you start to go into cohort modeling, meaning in which particular use cases does that particular positioning work. The next piece is tools. So there's some great tools depending on your budgets. Usertesting.com is one of the major ones out there. They're out of California. They can be quite pricey, but they can also be very precise. You can start to test this out. If you don't have the budget for that, I would direct you towards, I think it's called Usability Hub, if I'm correct. But just Google in kind of user research, user testing tools, and you can start to take a look. This, in your question, Daniel, is about how you get it to be faster and more precise. You really need a tool to start helping you. The one caveat, though, is this is in a digital environment, of course. It needs to be that. The second piece is you need to have enough traffic flowing to your digital ecosystem to get, basically statistical significance so that this can go faster. If you don't have enough
When you say enough traffic, what does this mean? 1,000 visitors on the website, 10,000, 500, 100,000.
The more the better. So it's like your graph going up and to the right. The more the better. And then it also depends on how many users you want in your sample size. So if you're talking e-commerce and you have a transactional type of situation, $50 euros, $100 euros, you're going to need a lot. I would say thousands. If you have a SaaS platform and you want to charge 100 to 300 euros a month and you're selling SMB, maybe you only need 500, maybe you only need 800. If you're selling into big enterprise companies and you have a 9 to 18 month sales cycle, this is quite different. Maybe this type of strategy might or might not work. It might work on the front end when you're trying to just capture what I call qualitative data on what your ICP and your personas are interested in. But as far as actually closing the sale or getting through the pipeline, it's a completely different process.
I want to ask you about a real world example. I'm discussing with a company right now. We might end up working together. I still don't know, but they have this issue. They are a no-code platform, no-code automation platform. The technology is basically industry agnostic. They have tens, hundreds of use cases, basically it can be applied, and it's true, it can be applied on a large scale for multiple industries, multiple use cases. And they have some clients on multiple verticals already. Nothing that it's super clear right now. It's nothing that they can say, oh, okay, we have this, we can scale it. They just tested with multiple industries, and now their positioning, it's very confusing. The messaging also very confusing. What they can do right now, it's that also analysis paralysis. What should we do? What should we communicate? Where should we position ourselves? We need to start from somewhere. I don't know what they can do to start, where they should start. I mean, you need, when you go to approach people, you need somehow to have that some sort of positioning. We do this, we do that. We are this type of platform. In your opinion, based on your experience, how can you handle a situation like this?
I would say, and to anyone listening, especially if you're a founder, this is one of the key mistakes. I would say if you own everything, or if you target everyone, you own nothing, you target no one. It's too much. You cannot boil the ocean at once when you're first starting to scale. What you need to do is look at your first cohort of clients, even if you only have 10. And let's say they're all 10 completely different industries. You need to really start thinking about, okay, which one is it easier to sell? Which one is it easier to pitch? Which people are responding? And this is what we call the step-by-step iterative approach. Because, for example, let's say you try to go to an investor and you say, I have 10 clients, they're all in 10 different industries. Your investor, rightfully so, is going to say, okay, well, which industry do you think is going to get us to the next stage of growth? And you're not going to have an answer for that. So this is where it's super important to start with 2, 3, get your clients in, tweak the positioning, and then move on to the next, the step-by-step iterative approach. Even if you have a use case of, it is no code, it can go for every industry, that's great in the future. But you can't boil the ocean at the beginning. You have to start somewhere. So
they have this fear. We might be wrong choosing this first vertical. We might be wrong not choosing the second one, or I don't know. But somehow they need to start communicating something. They need to position somewhere. And it's that fear. What happens if I don't get it right from the first time? So what you're saying is just go do there, do the work, and wait to see, test, iterate, and integrate the feedback, and then step by step you will find that positioning.
Exactly. And this, Daniel, is it's a philosophy difference between what I see in the US and UK scale-up environments and also the European scale-up environments. In continental Europe, there is this too afraid to fail, this risk aversion. And for all of the listeners, people that have worked between the different continents, you know exactly what I mean. If you go to operators and founders in the US or the UK and you say, we're going to do test and iterate, they're like, yeah, okay. What if you fail? Who cares? Who cares? That's the point. And then kind of to go back to all of the, Silicon Valley mantras from years ago, move fast, break things. I know those are kind of controversial statements, but the inherent methodology and philosophy underneath it is it's okay to fail. It's a scale up. It's like, for example, with restaurants, you say you're going to open a restaurant, you go to a bank, 90% of restaurants actually fail. The ones that you see succeed, those are the very rare success stories. And the nice thing about the test and iterate approach is that if one direction doesn't work, then you drop it and you go to the next direction, but you've at least done your due diligence to make sure if it worked or it didn't work. It's not about failing in an approach. It's about being too afraid to try an approach because you're too afraid to fail in it.
So one thing that I proposed to these guys was, okay, let's take 2 or 3 verticals. I just want to validate with you if what I told them to do is the right thing to do. Maybe I'm wrong. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. I told them, take 2 or 3 verticals, define a clear positioning for that specific use case in that specific industry, put your sales team, divide your sales team in three. Each one of the three sales units will tackle one specific industry with one specific use case, with one specific positioning and messaging. They still didn't feel that this is the right way. Would you say it's a way to start for 1 month? Just do this, iterate with three different verticals until you find something that works, something that truly clicks, and you can then focus all your effort in that specific direction?
I would say it's best to look at what the pain points are in the use cases. So dividing it into three is fine. But instead of just saying we're going to pick the, FMCG and the travel vertical and the whichever vertical, look at the use cases, because you're trying to get a connection between the pain that the customer is feeling, which is part of the reason that you're in business, right? To begin with, is to solve this pain, and how easy it is for you to connect your messaging and your value proposition with the actual client. So that is actually much more important than the particular vertical that you choose. It is how relevant is the pain and your connection. Meaning, if you call somebody up, and we're just going to take a very drastic example, you call somebody up and they live in the middle of the desert and they're walking through the desert, and you offer them some ice, there's a relevant pain and a relevant need, and you know that you're going to have an easier time pitching the solution. If you're calling someone up who lives in the Antarctica and you're trying to offer them ice, different situation. So I just use this as an extreme example because a lot of early stage founders, the splitting into three is fine. You want to have three different use cases, but make sure your use cases are more aligned to you solving the relevant pain. Like, how high of a pain is that for the client? And this is really how you should be delineating it, kind of make your list 1 through 10. This particular industry and this particular persona has the highest pain because of whatever the reason, and then start testing the use cases.
So most likely, even if we're talking about different industries, most likely all of these people, they have a pain which is similar, and your job is to focus on identifying that specific pain point, that specific use case that can be then scaled to multiple industries, multiple verticals.
Because once you find that you are hitting the mark with your messaging and your positioning towards this pain point, and you find that on the other end, your prospective clients are responding and getting into your sales funnel and want to buy, then you have something. Right? And then that's something you can start to test out. Okay, well, is that pain the same? And my messaging, my value proposition in a different industry? And then you're saying, oh yeah, well, it works in that industry too. Then you start to build out what you call the scalable model.
That makes sense. And because there's so much confusion about, thank you so much for sharing this. I think this is super valuable. I want to ask you, I already asked you this when we met in Dublin at SaaS Talk, but I think it's super important to have you recorded when you say it, because there's so much confusion about the difference and the connection between messaging, positioning, and copywriting. Can you please explain what's the difference between these three concepts and how are they strongly connected? I think would be super valuable for the community.
So all the founders and operators out there, first of all, it's not a big mystery. It can be solved. You need to start with your ethos. I tell everybody, start with forget about your price for a moment, because you can always change that very easily. Forget about all of that. Just start with a what do you believe statement. And I forget who I was just talking to the other day, but I was saying, if you go back to the old Tony Robbins, so for those of you who know Tony Robbins, a really great motivational speaker, you can find his stuff on YouTube, he talks about people don't buy what you sell to them, people believe what you believe. And a lot of companies don't actually put out their belief statements. We believe X. This is the thing that Nike and Apple, they did really, really well. When you look at their original messaging, look at Apple, and I'll just use it because it's the quintessential example. Steve Jobs didn't get up there and he started talking about all the, trinkets basically within the computer. He started with his original campaigns, which was called Think Different. Had nothing to do with the actual computer parts. It had to do with this movement that he's trying to create. So this is when you talk about messaging and positioning, your first step in messaging is what do you believe, right? So like you can take Patagonia as an example. They do a really great job of this, talking about what they believe. Nike is one of the quintessential companies talking about what they believe. They have all these campaigns about find your greatness. This is your messaging and your storytelling. And the interesting piece is they don't talk about the shoe. And so for all of you tech founders and operators, this is a really valuable lesson. Look at what Nike does. They're one of the oldest brands in the book in doing this. Messaging, that's your messaging. Just do it. Find your greatness. They're not talking about the shoe or the rubber or anything like that. That's your product marketing. That comes later. Okay. So once you have your messaging, then your positioning really depends on who you're trying to sell it to. Look at how they position their shoe to men versus women. All you need to do is go onto YouTube and look at the ads for Nike that are men versus women, and you're going to notice a difference. So this is your positioning. So if you're positioning to, let's say you're doing B2B SaaS and you're positioning to procurement managers versus you're positioning to a head of marketing versus a head of product, that positioning will be different, right? Your product leader wants to know how this is going to enhance their roadmap and, make their release schedule go quicker. Your marketing leader wants to know, is it going to resonate with our clients? How are we going to do campaigns? Your procurement person wants to understand, okay, is there a financial benefit to this? What will this do operationally? That's positioning, which is different than the overall message, though. So I hope that answers at least part of the question. But the really, really important point is whether you are SaaS or e-commerce, the majority, I want to say 85 to 90% of early stage founders and operators miss the point of branding, storytelling, and the what we believe.
That was my next question. How can you convince a tech founder that he needs storytelling? Features are important. Technology is important. The capabilities are important, of course. How do you convince somebody that's highly technical? Look, you need to integrate storytelling in this. How do you do it? How is it for you? Because I'm assuming you worked with so many different types of people, super technical people. How did you do it?
Yeah. So I usually break it down like this because I want to say sales is kind of one of the oldest, trades in the book. And we don't usually talk about their product. And I know in Europe, especially, a lot of founders, they want to spend a lot of time, especially in Germany, where I'm located, they spend a lot of time talking about the product and, product features and all that. And I say, okay, forget all of it. Let's go back to the traditional sales example. People will buy from people they like. So you think of the old-fashioned salespeople, maybe if the listeners, if you remember, people that would come to your door and try to sell you magazines or newspapers or knives or vacuums or whatever. They don't focus on their product first. They don't talk about the knives, the vacuums, the magazine, the newspaper. They say, hi, I'm John from so-and-so. They tell you a little bit about their lives. They talk about their story, how they got into this, why everything's so great. You're relating to them first, and then they talk about their product. And you can,
you're building the connection first. Your focus is to build the connection first and then introduce your product.
Exactly. So I use this example because most of the listeners at some point in their lives have probably run across a salesperson coming to their door or post-COVID trying to get a Zoom call, with them. This example is important because this is why companies, they for whatever reason, technology scale-ups have forgotten that you have to actually have a brand, a belief statement. You have to connect to your clients before you sell to them. And I want to say in the past 3 to 5 years, there's been this massive push towards product marketing. There's nothing necessarily inherently bad about product marketing. It's fantastic. But think about the Apple iPhone, for example. Okay. People are standing out in line around the Apple stores to get the next iPhone. They already know what the product is. They've had probably 5 iPhones at this stage, right? They know what the product is. They're standing in line to get the next one because they want to be a part of the brand, because they believe in the brand. And even when you take a Microsoft Surface tablet and you show it's got, who knows, more pixels, whatever it has, they still will choose the Apple one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I give founders these types of examples to show them real life situations of where your belief statement, your branding, your storytelling can be so much more powerful. This storytelling, the positioning, the messaging gets people into the virtual or physical store.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go with the product marketing and the rest of it down the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I use these examples to talk to early stage founders and operators, because sometimes, whether it's their own pressure, where they say, I have to make my first million ARR, right away, and they're just going after performance marketing, price, this kind of thing. And I don't know, Daniel, if you saw at SaaS Stock when I showed the graph of death, basically, going up and down. It's like, spend all this money, get these people in performance marketing. They're like, oh my gosh, we spent too much money. We don't know who our ICP is. Stop. And it's just this roller coaster of death. So I know it can be difficult because as an early stage founder, you want that first ARR to come in, or if you're e-commerce, you want that first GMV to come in. But really thinking about the longer term approach and what you're actually messaging, so much more weight over time.
You already touched this, but I want to ask this question. Messaging that drives attention is one thing. Messaging that gets attention, it's one thing. But messaging that drives action, it's a completely different thing. You already mentioned the Apple example, but I want to ask you about a specific example from your career, in your experience, where I don't know, at Amazon, at GoDaddy, maybe now at Resourcify, you did something, or how you created in a specific scenario, in a specific situation, you created that messaging that not only got people's attention, but also it was that type of messaging that drives actual action, makes people act. I would love to learn more about an example based on your experience, from your career.
So when I worked for GoDaddy, so shout out to all the GoDaddy people if they're listening, but when I worked for GoDaddy, they had a very long history. And for those of you that don't know GoDaddy, they started selling domains. So if you want to get, yourname.com, you would buy it there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also started to go into the website building space to compete with Squarespace and Wix. When I started there, GoDaddy had a very strong history of what I call this clickbaity kind of messaging and advertising, and very misogynistic.
Clickbaiting?
Clickbaity, so like clickbait, they would do something.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fantastical, for example, just to get the clicks. And their ads were so misogynistic. And it was just, you were looking at this and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm watching this, but you're watching it. But the difference that you just asked me, Daniel, was the difference between something just to get,
attention and something that gets action. Gets people act.
So when we were looking to build out the website building platform, we said, okay, let's do this ICP user research example. And what we found while the company was running these misogynistic ads is we found that 60% of the client base was women, female-led businesses. And that the future trajectory for future clientele was going to be female-led businesses. Big problem.
Wow.
So now we had to say, okay, how do we now change the positioning? And, GoDaddy, like many other companies, has a very strong culture and a very strong ethos. So this was also about trying to change the culture and the ethos and how you position what people believe. It's very difficult to do it head on without the data. So in this case, the data was very powerful, saying this is your current client base, this is the projection of what your future client base is, and hey, your current messaging is not landing. So in this case, we started to do a lot of ads about overcoming adversity, what it means to be a founder. And you'll see these, and they went through a huge rebrand. You'll even see the old. So you guys can Google GoDaddy, go to Google Images. You'll see the old brand, you'll see the new. It's super, super clear. that they made a 180-degree turn, and it's working out for them. And it's making them, back to what you were saying, like how do you position yourself to a broad range of industries? This is actually a pretty decent use case. They had to start with the change in their attitude and persona and their go-to-market, but it's worked for them over time. So it was a fantastic use case. And please do look at those old ads. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
I will. I just love this discussion. I can do this by tomorrow morning, but I value your time. Still, I have two more questions before we finish. One main challenge that tech founders have, software founders have, is aligning sales, marketing, and product development under the same roof. And it's super important because I know I'm sure you know better. When these departments are not aligned, there is a complete mess. So my question is, how do you align sales, marketing, and the product development team under the same vision, mission, same goal?
So it's a fantastic question, and it's something that a lot of, I wouldn't even say early stage companies, a lot of even larger companies have this problem. And I would say the problem gets bigger the larger the company gets, because then these departments naturally form their own silos. First thing is first. Number one, define your goal as far as a company is concerned. And it could be, next year we have to X, however much in revenue, or we have to enter a new market, or whatever the goal is. It's amazing to me how many people will work at a company, but if you ask them, what's the goal for 2024, or what's the company goal for 2025, and they won't be able to tell you. So you've already failed at step one. And you can't have any alignment if people don't know what the common goal is. And then what usually happens is the departments go into what I call their functional siloed goals, right? So product wants to optimize their roadmap, and marketing wants to do their campaigns, and they're looking at costs, and sales is just looking at what deals can they bring in to meet their quotas. That's usually what happens. Step two is start putting cross-functional teams together to solve common problems. And this is where a lot of, and again, has nothing to do with early stage companies. A lot of later stage companies actually do this as well. They silo off the problem solving. This is not good. This is one of the great lessons, and one of the great things that Amazon does. So if any of the listeners have read about like the pizza team models as far as putting teams together, the cross-functional teams. If you want to solve a go-to-market problem, put your product person, your marketing, your sales. I would actually start including your engineering. If you're lucky enough to have your own user research team, whoever the different stakeholders are, put them together and make them solve the problem together. It's amazing, and it's the most simplistic thing on the planet, but it's amazing how we're in coming towards the end of 2024, and a lot of companies still don't do this. If you're in a larger or a more advanced stage company where these are complex teams, then take a leader from each of these functions and put them together as far as a committee, a task force, whatever it might be. Give them the common problem and you have to make sure that they all work together to solve it, and then communicate that common solution down through the teams.
Cross-functional teams.
It's a very conventional answer to a very simplistic question, and it's amazing how companies still are not doing this.
It makes a lot of sense. And my last question is, how can you build a go-to-market engine when you have limited resources? When you're in your early stages, the budgets are non-existent most of the time. What can you do to build that go-to-market, not only go-to-market strategy? Because strategy, it's beautiful. We all want to do that strategy, but it's the execution which causes all the problems. So how do you build a go-to-market engine with limited resources? What would be the steps that as a tech founder in the early stages you should do to build your go-to-market, your distribution?
So I think, what I'm about to say, I think would probably be a little bit controversial because I know that there's definitely some different philosophies, but let's just say that you were either granted or you had an investment of €1 million or dollars, and you're trying to figure out how to divvy that up and get your teams together and what tools and systems you're buying and what you're doing. What I have seen so far in the industries is that founders will try to hire very inexpensive people, and you have a lot of junior people running around, and some founders think, well, the more people I have just doing something, the more something will happen. And I challenge this. It is better in your go-to-market motions to hire 2 to 3 very strong, seasoned people as much as your budget will allow, which I understand there's going to be a cap on this. But for whatever your budgets are, try to hire the most senior and experienced people that you can as early as you can.
As early as you can.
Early as you can. And this is the controversial piece, because a lot of founders are being told, no, just hire a bunch of juniors and they're just going to, figure it out. If the juniors had the answer, they wouldn't be junior.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the piece. And then you're basically having people just running around. In America, we call it, the business of busyness.
The business of busyness. Yes,
and
I know
this does not give you production. It does not give you sales.
Mm-hmm.
Senior people are supposed to learn from senior people. That's how they grow, and that's how you grow talent within your company. But when you're building your first go-to-market teams, you need to, as far as your budget will allow you, to hire the most senior people who will, of course, roll up their sleeves and do the work. But this is the one thing that I've seen that is such a controversial piece. It's better in my mind to have a small team of senior people who know how to strategize and execute and get you to the next level. And then they will grow your go-to-market motions out for you. But I actually see the opposite happening. A bunch of junior people. We love people who are junior in their career. You have to start somewhere. But at the same time, they're not going to have the knowledge or the skill set or the big word called experience to be able to get you to where you need to be. And especially at the beginning, every euro, dollar, whatever your currency is super, super valuable.
Mm-hmm. And what's the exact role of the founder in this situation? What should the founder do? Let's say they don't have any budget. They can't even afford an intern. What can the founder do in that specific scenario? What are his options or her options?
If you have no budget, you can't hire anyone, then what I would start to focus on is start to look at your network and your community and start to build a movement and a mission that your network will naturally want to help you. This is the only thing that you can do, because if you have no budget, like you can't buy tools, you can't do anything. Okay. So if I had $0 or euros, I would be going to my network and saying, look, this is what I believe. This is where your belief statement becomes super valuable and important. This is what I believe. This is what I'm trying to do. And you get people signed on to this belief, or you find like-minded people. And you'll find people naturally, if you say, hey, I'm starting a business, I want to help, solve cancer. Or you see a lot of startups now, and rightfully so. There's a lot of startups saying, we want to solve femtech issues, endometriosis, whatever it might be. There's a lot of people that will relate and they'll want to help because they want to help the mission. So this is where I say, go back to the what you believe and what you're trying to solve. Go to your network, find like-minded people, as experienced as you can find, to help you. And it's interesting, those other people you find, they will know other people. And this is kind of how you can grow that network until you get your initial funding.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this. Is there anything else you'd like to add, maybe before we finish? Maybe what would be a piece of advice for an early stage tech founder?
Yes. So I will just say, a couple of recaps. Number one, hire the most senior seasoned people that you can at the beginning. And then number two, back to the what you believe. It's amazing how people can, you get to a Series A or a Series B and they can talk about their product all day long. They can talk about, positioning and price, but you ask them, why are you doing what you're doing? And, there's no vision. So get the vision, the belief statement, the branding done early, and also try to go with as much senior seasoned people that you can afford early. And I would say these are the longer term investments that have huge payoffs over time.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Angeley, thank you so much. I truly value your time, and I really appreciate that you took the time today to be here. I just loved our discussion. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Please tell everybody where they can find you, your LinkedIn, if you have a website, and we will put all these details also in the show description.
Sure. So for all the listeners, you can find me on LinkedIn, Angeley Mullins. I also have a website, angeleymullins.tech. You can just go ahead, Google it, LinkedIn it, and you can find me. And I always am happy to reach out and answer questions. But it's been a great conversation today, Daniel. Nice to be on the show.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely day. Thank you.